Okay, so we go to the next one. Of course, Remo, the essential role of the nature of the binary progenitors for understanding GRBs.
Yes, all the technical details have been marvelously and in detail presented by Jorge. Therefore, I can take more relaxed position and some general consideration, and maybe only on the last part go back to the Jorge presentation that he did not manage to present, which is fairly relevant. I was going back to a talk I gave to the Philosophical Society in Washington in '73. And I recall there of a discussion of John Wheeler. '73 was really the beginning of this big revolution of the '71, '72 of the black hole introduction. And with Wheeler, we recalled a speech that Maxwell gave at the inauguration of the Clarendon laboratory in Cambridge. And he said practically that all the fundamental equations from Newton theory and Maxwell theory were available. And the only step to do next is just to go and measure with greatest accuracy the different constant. This vision of the next decimal number in the definition, in the measurement of the constant, received a big revolution, not by, well, you see the picture of the two people who made the greatest revolution. They were initially in the mathematics, and when Planck introduced his Planck constant, it was with the despair of Weierstrass, Karl Weierstrass, who was his teacher, that a so brilliant mathematician could leave mathematics to go to be interested in physics. Well, H-bar introduced, made one of the greatest revolution, not the next decimal number, but everybody knows that through the Planck constant, the quantum was introduced, and this classical world, very beautifully determined by Maxwell theory and Newton theory, was opened the gate to all particle physics and microphysics, a different universe from what Maxwell himself was thinking. Similar to the condition between the teacher and the student was the case of Albert Einstein, student of Hermann Minkowski, and in Zurich. And it's famous the fact that Minkowski once he appreciated special relativity. He said, but who is this Einstein? Oh, that bad student I had in mathematics. Well, this was another great revolution, and the introduction of G of another length, Gm divided by c squared. These two revolutions they were born at the same time. And once I asked Heisenberg, but I don't want to spend time now, about his opinion about the different way this revolution happened. Of course, quantum mechanics was immediately successful and verified observationally. Photoelectric effect, everything came at once. But the revolution of Einstein equation had to wait almost 50 years. This is this symmetry. And, and I will go back, of course, to the classical example of how general relativity came about. General relativity, in the beginning, of course, there was the precession of the perihelion of Mercury. Very tiny effect. It was very difficult. While quantum mechanics was going on and successfully verified and amplified particle physics and Heisenberg work was vacuum polarization and so forth, general relativity was still stuck with the precession of the perihelion of Mercury or the bending of light. Very tiny, tiny effects. And while all the revolution of quantum mechanics, Fermi theory and so forth was going on, Fermi himself started not to be interested any longer about the general relativity. But I would like to go back now to this author. You can see I'm finishing to write this book about this relation between Fermi and general relativity. But let's go on because I have to go back to the topic. And, of course, the great discovery came from the Crab pulsar, and it was beautiful to hear from Malcolm Longer this beautiful reconstruction of how this discovery came from few wires in the Cavendish laboratory. As soon as pulsars were discovered, I had the great honor to be invited by John Wheeler in Princeton as a postdoc, and he dedicated to me this beautiful picture with Einstein, Yukawa, and himself. They were a great time in which we were building up and even make the bold step, while everybody was working on neutron star. Wheeler said, no, we go on to introducing the black hole, and we did this famous work, and of course the great difference came from the observation of Riccardo Giacconi and his team with Uhuru, and the discovery of the first black hole in Cygnus X1, which still opens a lot of problems to understand how this object so massive at once collapse, and we have heard here some of the consideration still on this topic. But I would like to go now quickly to some of the consideration of the new revolution which has come out from the discovery of gamma ray burst. And the fact that for the first time we have a very, very, very rich situation, which is to analyze and how to probe the nature of the black holes. Already the presentation of Jorge was so perfect, and I don't need to add anything on this, apart to recall the role of binary system and the fact that before going to do a computation about a GRB, a computation about a spectrum, we need to understand the astrophysical system which give origin to this object. And Jorge has been very clear in indicating the evolution from two massive stars like Eta Carinae, and then develop further in objects like Cygnus X1, and we have heard the talk of Mirabel on this system like Cygnus X1 to Sen X3, and then he focused on the further evolution of this system in in a system formed of a neutron star and a CO core. I will look a little more to this system and the richness of the gamma ray bursts which are contained in all the transition of this scenario. We know today that there is not just one gamma ray burst, but there are many different gamma ray bursts. Where is the pointer? He took the... You have the pointer? Grazie. Well, there are 8 different kinds of gamma ray bursts. The short gamma ray burst coming from neutron star merging, leading to a more massive neutron star merging, leading to black holes, and then the X-ray flash of which Jorge has presented, the binary-driven hypernova presented by Jorge, the black hole supernova system generating again a gamma ray burst, ultra short gamma ray flash, and then the last one, gamma ray kilonova system. Well, each one of these has its own morphology and its own physics and astrophysics. Therefore, if we want to study a short gamma ray burst, for example, I will just show a few cases of this short gamma ray burst forming a black hole, but to show that they are distribution of families. And in the BDHN of which Jorge has been speaking is clearly the most numerous. This region over here. But they are also short gamma ray flash, X-ray, excuse me, they are also short gamma ray burst and short gamma ray flash, the one forming neutron star merging to a more massive neutron star with a signature of the peak and the EISO from 10 to the 49 to 10 to the 52. And then there is, and this is one of these, the sample of this short gamma ray flash which have no jet emission. Just wait a second and back. Yeah. And yes. And I will focus just on this system, neutron star going to black hole. Therefore, the relation of this next step goes back to this projection of Jorge. Here there are the neutron star CO core going to form binary-driven hypernova. And then out of these sources, which are binary-driven hypernova, you can form neutron star binary. And then this neutron star binary themselves can form a massive neutron star or a black hole. This one are the short gamma ray flash, less than 10 to the 52 Hertz, and this one are the one with energy larger than 10 to the 52 Hertz, neutron star forming black holes. Since many of these observations, okay, this is the list of the short gamma ray flash, the one not having high energy emission, and the characteristic peak energy here the no JEV emission, and the redshift of this object, apart this one, which I will turn in a moment, they are all very, very close by. Therefore, the short gamma ray flash have this property of, yes, of having to be many and nearby. Now, let's go back to one of the first systems, which was discovered by Fermi, by LAT, and also by your Agile telescope. And the best example is 090510. We have been able to understand the theory of this system, the spectrum, the PGRB, the afterglow, and we have made all the theory of this 090510, which has the characteristic of we have been discussing with many people, including our chairman, to distinguish the different structure of the afterglow and of the PGRB, the spectra. But what has been very, very important is that we have been able to measure the redshift, not us, but the observational people, and found that the observed redshift has been measured and exists, but also to make a prediction of the theoretical understanding of the system and indicate a theoretical derived redshift. And on this ground, we have continued our analysis. On one system, GRB 090510, which has the property of emitting in the X-ray, in the gamma ray, in the optical, and in the JEV. It's a system which emits in all spectra. Opla. No, cosa ho combinato qua? Vado bene? Yes. And in this case, you see the emission in the different wavelength and also in the JEV. Therefore, it's a system which emits in all possible wavelengths and has a redshift of 0.9, which we have been able to reproduce theoretically. Now, what has been going on since we determined the redshift theoretically? We have been looking at other short GRB, which did not have a cosmologically determined redshift, but we computed on the basis of the theory which we developed for 090510 the estimate of their redshift. Therefore, these are all estimate value from the theory. And the big difference of this other GRB that have the same energy is that if you compute the redshift theoretically, then you can determine the energy of the LAT. Is that clear? Because we determine theoretically the redshift, and from the observation, with that determined theory, which is based on the inner physics of the GRB, we can evaluate the Z, and then evaluate the EISO and all these other properties. These systems, therefore, we evaluate theoretically this redshift. And what it comes out, which is very beautiful, is that if you take the luminosity of the JEV radiation into in the rest frame of that theoretically determined redshift, all the JEV radiation, the luminosity, when measured in the rest frame of the system, overlap. This is a consequence. Therefore, the redshift does not assume the overlap of the JEV emission. The overlap of the JEV emission is a consequence. And this result, I don't want to go, I have to go on, is practically that all these systems are practically, I will show you in a moment, practically the same energy independently of their redshift. And in particular, in a most recent case, 090426, if you compare the X-ray emission of each one of these sources, they practically overlap. Therefore, they don't overlap only in the JEV. They overlap also in the X-ray and also in the optical. And therefore, what it comes about is how to explain, and this comes now, okay, this is a fact, that they overlap in the X-ray, they overlap in the LAT, and practically they are all substitute one, all of them, you can substitute one from the next. Well, let me open a parenthesis, since we have Roy Kerr here, and here we were with Stephen Hawking celebrating the mass formula of the black hole and the fact that the black hole was obtained practically at this mass formula by Christodoulou, Stephen in '71, a few months apart. But what I want to show in the rest of the talk is that we can really infer the energy of this short burst and relate to the mass, to the mass and spin of this family of short GRBs. And if you compute the energy of this source, and if you compute the spin of the black hole and the mass of the black hole, which is originate from the energy of the short GRBs, the mass is practically the same, the spin is very similar, and depending on the equation of state, and therefore different from all the other gamma ray bursts, which are all different among themselves. You can take any BDHN, any short gamma ray burst of the other, the gamma ray flash and so forth. Each one is different. All of these have a common mass and a common value of the spin. And this is related to the formation, the formation of the black hole in a very, very narrow region. Now, if the only application of this to the short GRB of the nature of 170817 is that if you look at that GRB 170817, is that if you take the 090510 luminosity law with the common luminosity, and if you look in Agile in this period, you see that there is no communality between the jet emission in this system and the outer short GRB, which form a black hole. And therefore, the key point I would like to show is that contrary to all the outer GRB families, short GRBs all have comparable mass energies. But short GRB as defined from us, I mean the one over 10 to the 54 and with JEV emission. Their JEV luminosity in the source rest frame overlap and follow a universal power law. The redshift is observed in 2 cases, and in all the outer short GRB, it has been theoretically determined. But the JEV emission is not used in determining this redshift. Therefore, the only consequence is that since there is no JEV radiation of this family, let's go to the last part of the talk. If you take the BDHN that have been shown by Jorge, the same relation applies to the same relation between the luminosity in the rest frame applies for all these BDHN which are originating from the gravitational collapse of the supernova. But there are 2 different systems. It's a little complicated to go through this. And again, contrary to the black hole and spin and mass which is observed in a short GRB, in the case of long GRB, in the BDHN, where also you form a black hole, you have parameter of alpha and the spin and the mass, which is larger than the one of the short GRB. And this is to be expected because while the accretion process in the short GRB leads necessarily to the critical mass of the 2 neutron stars merging, in the case of BDHN, you can have much more mass and spin, but the universal relation, this is the important point, the universal relation between the luminosity in the rest frame, the luminosity in the rest frame in the short GRBs, in this one, is also valid in the case of the long GRB, and the power law is practically the same. Clear? It's quite impressive. I'm sorry to have been late last night, but let me conclude first and show another point which is essential. In the case of BDHN, there is a geometry which we can infer from this data, and practically there is an emission from this central region. And so there were many more data which I wanted to come back, but the only strong point, although the only strong point I want to make is that the interpretation of GRB phenomenology cannot overlook the knowledge of the morphology of the binary progenitor. Therefore, the neutron-star merging, if they form black hole or not, I mean, all this has to be taken care into building a model, and the talk by Jorge has been a beautiful example in this direction. Let's go back a moment to Planck and to Einstein, to H over mc and gm divided by c squared. if you impose, you ask when the Planck mass, when the mass of the Compton wavelength and the Schwarzschild radius coincide, is very well known, is the Planck mass hc divided by g to the 1/2. And the big issue is another one when the black hole play a role in this equation. And what is very impressive is, and impressive is the fact that the light is not working, is that if you have fermions and you ask the critical mass to form a black hole, you have the Planck mass cube, mass Planck cube divided by m squared. This is very well known. But what Jerry Oestreicher presented on Monday evening has been a fascinating evolution of this other critical mass, which is the critical mass of bosons, with a square of the Planck mass divided by the mass of the boson. The square is divided by. I cannot correct now. And it is very interesting that this leads to different black hole formation process. For fermions, you can have critical mass given by the first formula, and the second one by the bosons. Now, how to test this? I have shown, not very much in detail, but you can find in the publication, that for fermions, we can, just from the Jev radiation, understand in detail the structure of the critical mass and the spin and the angular momentum. The case of the boson, it is necessary to look for a different object. Therefore, gamma ray burst can be very important for the first critical mass. For bosons, we have to look at a different system, very likely much more massive and bigger than just a neutron star and black hole, a small black hole, a small black hole in the sense astrophysical black hole. And the next lecture, which we will hear, brings us to the center of the galaxy. And there is no better place to check if you have black hole formed following the boson system, also in light of what the beautiful lecture by Oestreicher gave on Monday, to see if there are alternative process to formation of very large black hole. And we are looking forward, and it will be much more technically presented by the next speaker, where to look for massive black hole, which eventually are derived both by fermions of 30 keV or by boson, like Oestreicher showed. Therefore, the mass of the black hole is determined in gamma ray burst with great accuracy with spin and angular momentum following the mass formula, but we have to wait until the next speaker shows us the beautiful picture of large black hole not far away, but just in the core of our own galaxy.
Thank you, Remo. Comments or questions quickly? Or short? Everything is clear. I have a comment on the decay part of the X-rays and optical for short and these long systems, which have the same power law, apparently, even though maybe it's not exactly the same, but it's very similar. So this is the decay part. So
the Jev part, not the afterglow. The afterglow has also power law,
Right.
but
No,
different.
but you were talking also of the X-ray and the optical,
Yes.
which were similar
Oh.
in the short. So
Yes, that is very impressive. We
right,
just
it's
obtained.
quite- exactly, yeah.
We just obtained this 3 or 4 days ago.
So there is at the
Namely-
same time the GV emission, right?
Yes, and that is the beauty of this result. I mean, you have 090510, you have all the data, okay? And then you have another source, which is this 090426, in which you have the JEV radiation, but you have only a theoretically predicted
that is good.
redshift. But then you have another source, new, which we have seen, which overlap with that one. In other words, the beauty of this system is that no matter, they are all the same. Therefore, you can take data from Fermi, if you have them, and if you don't have the Fermi data, on a similar short, you can go and measure the part missing. And the important point of this system, I had not the time to, at the time, but I was, but the important, you understand this point, the important point of this system is that in one case, you have the measure of the redshift measured, 2.6,
No, it's clear.
and in the other case, you have the determination from the theory.
No,
But
but
both of
what I
them-
want to say is that this kind of behavior on the long time scale of 10 to the 4th seconds,
Yes,
this is accretion driven emission. I mean, it's a sort of, it's a consequence of the formation of the black hole, right?
yes,
And then the sort of delayed emission comes from either a cocoon or some sort of remnant, which is left over, right?
yes. Certainly, yes, is the last part. But
the
what
last
I am interested is that if you take this family of short GRB, which form black hole, you can interchange because the mass, they are all the same. The parameters are all the
No, I
same.
understand.
The power law is the same. Therefore, if you miss the data, for example, in this case, you had no optical data from 090510, but you gain the optical data from another GRB, and you can know also the optical part. These systems are all the same. This is the big news.
Okay, so I think if there are no more comments, we can stop here. Yes, thank you, Ray.